Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was a Demigod in the Justice League, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Why have you gathered us all here today, Batman? Green Lantern asked. It was only a few minutes after Flash, Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter sabotaged the International Space Station. To prevent anyone from getting their hands on that powerful railgun, they blew up the whole satellite. Everyone else on board, the astronauts and Kasnia's agents too, was taken out and brought to the watchtower thanks to Green Lantern's power ring. But it was only temporary. They had to take them back to Earth. All the members of the Justice League were gathered in the conference room. Except for Wonder Woman, the rest were looking at Batman, waiting for an explanation. Do you remember that alien mercenary that rescued Superman half a year ago? He's back. He came back to Earth and our watchtower's radar couldn't detect it all. So that was the big emergency. Hawkgirl scoffed. Last time we met him, he wasn't a psychopath. He saved Superman's life. Appearances can be deceiving. He's dangerous. He put me under an illusion and I didn't even know it until he lifted the spell himself. While Wonder Woman was imprisoned and I was under that illusion, he broke into Vandal Savage's control room and cut off his head. A momentary silence descended. In their memories, the alien mercenary and his talking fox did not strike them as the cold-blooded killer type. If anything, he seemed like a decent person at heart because he had gone out of his way to save Superman and Supergirl. It was Green Lantern that broke the silence. As far as I'm concerned, good riddance. Seeing the way everyone was looking at him, he said. That madman poisoned the king of a country, destroyed 3 US Navy ships killing almost everyone on board and then tried to start World War III. I'll say it again, good riddance. Not to mention what he did in World War II too. When presented with the hard facts, nobody could retort against his words. Vandal Savage was one of the worst scourges of the earth. Batman narrowed his eyes as he spoke. This guy is a mercenary. He'll do whatever he's paid for. What if his target was the US president instead of Vandal Savage? What could we have done to stop him when we can't even detect him? At his words, everyone finally realized the gravity of the situation, what Batman was worried about. We've banded together and created the Justice League after Imperium nearly took over our planet almost 1 year ago. Our purpose, as the Justice League, was primarily to defend against alien threats. If we can't do that, what is the Justice League needed for anymore? We don't need to work together just to keep in check the criminals with superpowers. We've been doing that just fine, solo, long before the Justice League was formed. Superman nodded and said in support to his words. Batman is right. We're not the only ones who took the responsibility of protecting the innocent. Almost every large city has its own local hero or group of heroes that protect it, just like us. As the Justice League, we must not forget about our purpose. As they started to discuss how to improve Earth's defenses against external threats, an alarm started to blare from the Watchtower's control room. Flash was the first to arrive and see the reason. An enormous alien ship could be seen heading towards Earth at a very high speed. Asterism. Even after all these years, I can't see what you like so much about ramen. The taste is nothing special and there is so little meat. We're also in the middle of a job, aren't we? Kyuubi's voice sounded in Naruto's earpiece. Naruto brought the bowl of ramen to his mouth and drank all the remaining soup in one breath. Shut up, when was the last time I had ramen? Half a year ago. 6 months. Suddenly, a very loud growling sound almost made Naruto go deaf in 1 year. Oi, Kurama, the hell was that? What are you doing? Hee, just a stupid bear that didn't know its place. I'm going to eat roasted bear now. Talk to you later, Kyuubi said and then cut off his transmission. Good grief, Naruto said and chuckled at Kyuubi's antics. After capturing Vandal Savage, Naruto did not immediately leave the Earth. Earth was one of the very few planets where people cooked ramen and he had not eaten any in half a year, since the last time he came to Earth. Naturally, he would not pass on the opportunity to have some again. But Kyuubi did not tag along with him this time around and chose instead to wander through the Balkan Mountains, where Kasnia was located, in the meantime, having some fun of his own. As for Naruto, he flew halfway across the planet, from southeastern Europe to the northeastern coast of the American continent, to Boston City, where he had eaten ramen the last time. While the Justice League was having a very serious discussion concerning the danger that Naruto posed, the man in question was in a world of happiness as mountains of empty bowls of ramen piled up on his table. Since it was early morning on the eastern coast of America at that moment, there were other customers besides him in the restaurant too. It goes without saying that his outrageous eating immediately became the focus of their attention. Wearing a mask while eating did not do him any favors either. Some crazy alien crashed on Earth again. Hey, Russell, turn up the volume, one of the customers asked the clerk behind the counter. It looked like the customer in question was a regular because the clerk listened to his request and turned up the volume on the TV hanging above the counter. Naruto threw a passing glance at the screen, but he immediately focused his full attention on it when he saw the contents of the news report. An alien object crashed in the center of Jump City just 10 minutes ago. The sole survivor of the crash appears to be a young woman in her late teens, but it became clear that she was not human when she spoke in an alien language and started smashing the walls of the surrounding buildings with her hands. Charles Rock is at the scene with more information. As the news anchor spoke, a live footage started playing. But when Naruto saw who that alien was, he said slowly, "No fucking way." He tapped quickly on his wristwatch and a hologram appeared from it. It was the 3D image of a young woman in her late teens with golden-colored skin, long, wavy red hair, and bright green eyes. Boyd, what are the chances? The girl in the hologram coming from his wristwatch was the very same person as the berserk alien on the news report. It was none other than Coriander, the princess of Tamaran who Naruto was supposed to rescue from the Scions. Asterism. An Almaration warship was flying at the fastest speed it was capable of in Earth's atmosphere. The moment Naruto realized that the alien that had crashed into Jump City was his bounty, he ditched his ramen in a heartbeat and teleported back to his ship. To cover the distance between Boston and Jump City, Earth's commercial aeroplanes would need to fly for a few good hours. One city was on the east coast while the other one was on the west coast of the USA. In contrast, it took him only a few minutes. However, despite his speedy arrival, by the time he got there, the central district was already trashed as if it had gone through a war. Destroyed buildings, burning cars, cracked streets, and civilians running away in panic. In the middle of all that destruction, the Tamarine princess was shooting energy bolts from her cuffed hands while screaming in an alien language. Opposite of her, three peculiar teenagers were running and dodging as though the very lives were on the line. And that was the actual case. In her desperation and rage, Coriander was shooting energy blasts everywhere around her. "That was super close," a green-skinned boy wearing a helmet said while panting. "Girl is gonna wreck the whole city," another one of them said. It was a very buff young man dressed in casual clothes and a hoodie covering his head. Going by the red glow in his left eye, it seemed like he was not entirely human. "I won't let her. I won't lose this fight," the third one said. It was a black-haired boy dressed in a green and red costume. A thin black mask covered his eyes. The three of them were none other than Robin, Beast Boy and Cyborg. At Robin's words, they jumped away from the bus behind which they had taken cover and rushed at the alien girl who had fallen to her knees in exhaustion. But their sight suddenly turned ashen black and they stopped in their tracks. "Maybe fighting isn't the answer," a girl said as she walked out of a side alley. Her entire body was covered by a hooded purple cloak. Further talk among the 14 stopped, however, when someone dropped from the sky almost like a meteorite and the entire street was shaken by the powerful tremor. "Who are you?" Robin shouted and grabbed a birdrang from his utility belt. It looked like the newcomer did not hear him because he started walking towards the kneeling girl without sparing the other four a glance. "Don't come any closer," Coriander shouted hysterically and pointed her cuffed arms at him as energy bolts formed in her hands. Unlike the teens from before, Naruto had no issues with understanding her words thanks to his high-tech translating device. "I'm not gonna hurt you. Your parents hired me to rescue you." Naruto had expected at the mention of her parents for the girl to calm down, but instead, her face became twisted in anger and she screamed as she shot two very powerful bolts of energy from her hands. Though startled, he was not caught off guard. He had been cautious from the beginning because he knew very well just how dangerous a cornered beast could be. With a stomp of his foot, the street in front of his feet rose to make a wall in front of him, just in time to block the green energy bolts. The wall was blasted to smithereens, but the girl had poured the last of her strength in that attack. Then, she collapsed back on the ground powerlessly. She no longer posed any threat. It's all right, little girl. Just go to sleep, Naruto said, and he formed a ram seal with his hands. Though Coriander was able to detect the unknown energy that invaded her body, she was too exhausted to resist against it. Her eyes closed against her will and she fell on her side, succumbing into a genjutsu-induced deep sleep. It was the same technique that Kabuto had cast over the stadium where Naruto's first Chunin exams had taken place when he was a young genin. That is to say that it was an area of effect technique. The alien princess was not the only one to be forced into a deep sleep, but 2 of the 3 boys on the sidelines also fell on the ground asleep, with Beast Boy even snoring out loud. The only ones who could hold their composure and resist the genjutsu were the cloaked girl, Raven, and Cyborg, due to him being half robot. Over the past century, Naruto had never stopped training his taijutsu, ninjutsu and genjutsu, the 3 main arts of a shinobi. He had achieved an impressive feat in his ninjutsu due to his shadow clones. He had mastered all 5 nature transformations and even the yin and yang releases. His taijutsu had become flawless as well. Due to knowing that if he found a way back home he would have to fight against the rabbit goddess, Naruto had never slacked in his training. But genjutsu had never been his strong point. He had no talent in that area and hard work could only take one so far. Although he became proficient enough with it to fool the senses of regular people, those with decent magic resistance and any half-decent magic user could resist his genjutsu without problems. In that regard, the aforementioned girl, Raven, was more than half-decent when it came to magic. Black light appeared around Raven's hands and her eyes glowed beneath her hood. Cyborg's hand transformed into a cannon too as he shouted, "What did you do to them?" But Naruto did not have time to reply because a beam of red light blew up the place in front of his feet. It was a warning shot, coming from none other than Superman. And he was not alone. Alongside him were also Flash, Batman and Hawkgirl. The ship that the Watchtower had detected was a Gordanian ship from which Coriander had broken out. Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman were investigating it at that moment. Now, he was surrounded from all sides by the 4 members of the Justice League and 2 of the local heroes of Jump City. "Do not move," Superman demanded. Naruto frowned behind his mask. "Why did you come back to Earth? And why did you kill Vandal Savage?" "Gee, Superman, why would a mercenary capture someone? Maybe because someone paid me to." Superman frowned at his sarcasm. "Why are y'all even mad? I got rid of a mass murderer for you, for free. For all I know, you should be grateful. No lengthy trials, no chance for him to buy his way out with bribes and good lawyers, and no chance for him to escape prison again either. He's finished." "That's not how things work on Earth," Batman retorted. "No one has the right to take the law in their hands and kill." Naruto let out a drawn-out sigh. Whatever you say. I'm not in the mood for polemics. Look, I'll just get my bounty and be out of here." Then, under their eyes, he bent down and grabbed the sleeping princess from the ground and put her on his wide shoulder. "Put the girl down," Superman ordered as he started making steps towards him. "She's my bounty. And she's not an Earthling. This has nothing to do with you," Naruto said calmly, trying to reason with them. However, in the next moment, a red blur rushed at him from behind at the speed of sound. But with a light stomp of his foot, dangerous-looking spikes burst from the ground, almost impaling the attacker. The speedster was forced to jump high up in the air at the very last moment and abandon his attacking attempt. A clone appeared next to Naruto and grabbed the princess from his shoulder. Then, he turned towards the heroes surrounding him and warned, "I'm saying it one last time, this has nothing to do with you. Back off before things get ugly. I don't want to hurt you." Generally, Naruto tried to not get into altercations with good-natured people. He did not want to kill or maim people that did not deserve it. However, because he was not bound by the tight morals, once in a while, scenes like the current one still took place. "Oh, I don't know who'll get hurt in the end," Hawkgirl said, and her mace shone menacingly with electricity. "I suggest you let go of that girl and hand over Vandal Savage's remains too. After that, we won't stop you from leaving. You can leave the Earth and never come back," Batman said. Naruto no longer spoke. He prepared for fighting. Naturally, in normal conditions, he could have just teleported back to his ship and then be on his way. But with Coriander in his custody, things were different. He was more than capable of teleporting her alongside him, but the problem came after that. He did not know for how long the genjutsu that he had placed on her would last. His skill with genjutsu was unreliable. If she wakes up in my ship and starts throwing around her energy bolts, my ship will be toasted. Initially, he had intended to explain the Tamaranine princess the situation and make her come willingly. But that idea flew out of the window with the Justice League's appearance. Of course, he also had another option, to beat the crap out of the girl until she became physically unable to even move, but Naruto was not the kind to raise his hands against innocence. Especially since his mission was supposed to be about rescuing and protecting her, not breaking her arms and legs. But just then, a huge hologram appeared in the sky. It was the image of a muscular humanoid lizard with red eyes and metallic wings. It was a Gordanian. A sonorous voice reverberated through the entire city. People of Earth, we come to your planet to hunt down an escaped prisoner. A very dangerous prisoner. Do not interfere and we will leave your city with minimum damage. But if you attempt to assist her, your destruction will be absolute. Just as the Gordanian's words ended, Martian Manhunter's voice sounded in Batman's earpiece. Batman, the Gordanians on the ship do not want to negotiate. We cannot approach them easily either. They have their weapons aimed at us. True to the Martian's words, only a few moments later, a swarm of flying Gordanians appeared in the sky above Jump City. There were almost 100 of them. Gordanians. Why are they here? The words came out of Hawkgirl's mouth. Originally, she was more than ready to start brawling against the masked alien mercenary, but the moment the immense hologram of the Gordanian ship's commander appeared in the sky, she immediately changed her mind. She was not the only one either. Green Lantern was of the same mind as well. Though the Gordanian intergalactic empire was from outside the 3,600 space sectors regulated by the Green Lantern Corps, most of the Green Lanterns were aware of their evil deeds. Superman, we are focusing on the wrong guy. Green Lantern transmitted through his earpiece. He was currently flying very high up in the air, in front of the Gordanian ship together with Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman. I've heard about the Gordanians before. There. Hawkgirl cut him in the middle and continued his words. An intergalactic empire hell-bent on conquering and enslaving the galaxy. My people, the Thanagarians, have been at war against them for generations. They're the worst scum of the universe, pieces of trash that conquer planets and sell their inhabitants as slaves. Her voice was quivering with anger. The hate in her voice could not be faked. Her hatred for Gordanians had been ingrained in her since she was a frail child. They were her race's archenemy. It did not take a genius to realize that the alien girl was an escaped slave from one of the worlds enslaved by the Gordanians. They also reached the conclusion that the mercenary had no intention to harm her given that he had not attacked her and had only put her to sleep. Nevertheless, Naruto had no way of knowing what the Justice League was talking about amongst themselves. When Superman got within a 25 feet long distance from him, he thought that they were finally going to attack him. I've warned you, boy. I gave you a chance to back away. You only have yourself to blame. He spoke coldly. Wait, Superman began to say. He wanted to momentarily cease their hostilities in order to deal with the Gordanians' attack first, but his change of heart had come a little too late. The masked mercenary spread his feet in a wider stance and his legs bent slightly from the knees. Then, he slapped his hands together like in prayer and his fur-collared black cloak began to float and billow despite the absence of any wind, revealing the combat suit he was wearing underneath. A terrible aura started to ooze out of his body and a great feeling of danger assaulted Superman's sharp senses. But he was left with no room to react at all before he found himself losing his equilibrium and getting slammed against the ground. He was not the only one. On a radius of 600 feet around the praying Naruto, all living beings fell flat on their face against the ground. Only a few moments later, the nearly 100 Gordanians that had been flying in the air before were smashed against the ground too, cracking the streets with their bodies and splattering the surrounding cars and buildings with their blood. Fortunately, there were no civilians around as they had evacuated the entire district from the moment that Coriander had started to crazily blow up everything around her. But the ones present at the scene, the Gordanians, the Justice League and the 4 local heroes of Jump City were not as lucky. What is this? Flash said as he tried to push against the ground with his hands, but he fell back with a thud that almost knocked him out cold. He was finding it hard to even breathe. An invisible force was pulling at his internal organs and his blood was churning. Hawkgirl was similarly flat against the rooftop of a building, Her superior Thanagarian constitution made her having it easier than Flash, but she could still not move even an inch from where she stood. As for Batman, he was on the brink of death, barely holding on to his consciousness. It was gravity. With Naruto as the center, in a circle of 600 feet in diameter, Earth's gravity was multiplied several times over. It was the peak of mastery that Naruto had reached in the Earth release and the 6 Paths Sage mode. Every living being in that area was flat on their belly or back, struggling to cope against the force that threatened to end their lives. The Tamaranine princess, Robin and Beast Boy had been shaken out of their genjutsu-induced sleep, but they were similarly helpless, especially Robin, who was in the same situation as his former mentor. The only one able to raise up from the ground was Superman. His immense strength as a Kryptonian was clearly living up to its fame. If this goes on, everyone will die. We were in the wrong. Please stop, Superman said, his breathing erratic. The nearly 100 armed Gordanians that had flown down to Earth were all dead already, their smashed and bloodied corpses creating a macabre passage. The cloaked girl, Raven, had encased herself in a sphere of pure darkness and was probably still fine as she sat on the ground. Beast Boy had turned himself into a tiny flea to decrease the effect of gravity on his body as much as possible, and Hawkgirl was in no immediate danger either, just immobilized. But Flash and Cyborg were starting to have serious difficulties, while Batman and Robin were on the verge of dying. Though he was very annoyed at the Earthlings' nosiness, Naruto had never intended to kill them. That's why he had chosen to immobilize them instead of throwing any deadly techniques at them. Therefore, when he heard Superman's offering of peace, his hands that were stuck to each other in a prayer parted. Like a miracle, the terrible pulling force stopped. Although the Justice League and the heroes of Jump City were now free to move again, nobody dared to resume their previous hostility. But the collective relief was almost palpable. However, when they thought that it was finally over, a haze of red and gold light began to pour out of Naruto's body. From his legs to his waist and up to his chest, before finally enveloping his head too, almost like a cocoon. Bathed in gold and crimson red light, he appeared like a miniature sun in the darkness of the night. 1. Asterism. The entire process took only 1 second, but to the onlookers, it felt as though it was much longer. Then, the cocoon of light blasted outwards and a tremendous aura of power flooded the entire sky, and not only. At that moment, regardless of what place on the planet they were, the magic users highly attuned to the flow of magic sensed the disturbance. Inside a high-class restaurant in London, UK, a blonde man was having dinner with a very wealthy-looking man. He was in the process of promoting a brand new sleeping pill, self-created pills charmed to produce a magically induced sleep, when he suddenly jumped up to his feet, almost flipping the table and greatly startling his dining partner and potential customer. In a lone tower outside of Salem, in Massachusetts, a grizzled-haired man was having breakfast with his wife when he suddenly shivered and spilled the cup of coffee he had been drinking. In Napoli, Italy, a beautiful illusionist botched a magic trick that she was performing on the stage when she momentarily lost her focus, and instead of taking a rabbit out of her magic hat, she took out a snake, making the entire audience cry out in panic. On the island of Paradise, the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta, was startled awake from her meditation, and her devotion time to the gods were interrupted. Great Athena, protect her. She prayed, her heart filled with worry at the thought of her daughter. Asterism. Enveloped in a mix of crimson red and golden chakra, his feet left the surface of the street as he started to slowly float. Behind his back, 10 pitch-black orbs came into existence, and with their apparition, a heavy pressure descended. It was not a physical force or something that could be seen or explained with science. It was the coercion that a superior existence could exert on the beings on a lower evolutionary scale. While the metahumans present at the scene were not too drastically affected, the regular humans on several tens of miles around were overwhelmed by a feeling of fear. Even before the rabbit goddess had thrown him into a dimensional portal, Naruto had been able to enter the 6 Paths Sage mode and combine it with his tailed beast mode. However, after almost a century, his mastery over it grew to the point where it could rival that of his ancestor, the Sage of the 6 Paths himself. With a red and yellow flash, his body disappeared. An instant later, he was 3 miles high up in the air, above Jump City, right in front of a galleon-class Gordanian ship. It was not the small type of ship that the Gordanian slavers used normally. It was much larger, almost half a mile long, with a crew numbering in the hundreds. It showed how much importance the Princess of Tamaran held for the Scions, since the Gordanians were nothing more, nothing less than the Scion monarchy's attack dogs. In front of such an enormous space ship, Naruto looked like an ant. But the moment he appeared floating in the sky, the warship's tens of guns and cannons were trained on him. Even the largest particle cannon at the bow of the spaceship, a cannon capable of even blowing up smaller moons, started to glow and flicker, a sign of it being charged to fire. A hail of laser beams was shot at him, but he seemed as calm and collected as ever. With a wave of his hand, one of the truth-seeking balls behind his back flew in front of him and took the form of an enormous black shield. The laser beams did not even make a sound of impact. At the contact with the black shield, they simply vanished. The Gordanians aboard the spaceship did not even have time to express their surprise, because right after the first wave of fire, Naruto flew closer to the black shield and slapped it lightly with his palm. But that light slap caused a shockwave so powerful that the sky was completely cleared of clouds in a radius of tens of miles around. Similarly, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, who had been watching the unfolding events with a blank look on their faces, were also blasted to thousands of feet away from the Gordanian ship's proximity. In fact, Naruto did not need to slap the shield that hard or to hit it at all. He could control it with a simple thought, with his mind. But he had done so in order to blow away the three members of the Justice League, because he did not want for them to get killed too in the crossfire. Green Lantern managed to stabilize himself in the air the first, and he also caught his two teammates with his power rings constructs of green light. The three of them turned their heads and looked back at the Gordanian ship just in time to see the large black shield smashing against it. They had been expecting a very powerful explosion, or at least another shockwave similar to the one from a few moments before. But there was none of that. The moment the black shield clashed against the Gordanian ship, it turned into a black sphere that encased the half-a-mile-long galleon-class starship within. Then, without even making a sound, the enormous sphere that had encapsulated the Gordanian ship imploded. A warship capable of even taking over a planet was turned into nothingness, just like that. After that, the now tiny orb flew back next to the other 9 truth-seeking orbs floating at his back. Jesus Christ. Great hero. In front of a scene like that, Green Lantern and Wonder Woman could not help crying out the name of the gods they believed in. Martian Manhunter himself was mute, speechless. Down below, on the ground, the rest of the Justice League and the 4 local heroes of Jump City were no less shocked either. Although it was night, Naruto's 6 paths Biju mode glowing like a miniature sun and the ship being almost half a mile long made them see what had happened perfectly, even despite the distance. Even for Batman and Superman, 2 veterans in fighting all kinds of aliens, it was the first time they had seen something as shocking as that. Until then, Batman had always thought that with enough preparation time, planning, and money, he could go against anyone. Naturally, that led to a great level of self-confidence and even a certain amount of pride being born in his heart. He, a mere human, with no superpowers, had managed to stand on equal grounds even against incredibly powerful beings such as Superman, Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter. However, when he saw the enormous Gordanian ship being erased from existence without even leaving a scrap of metal behind, he was shaken. What could I possibly do alone against a being like that? No. What could the Justice League do against someone like him? At the same time, Batman's mind also went to the business card that Naruto had given him half a year before. Back then, he had found it weird that someone that was wearing a fox-themed mask and had a 9-tailed fox companion would have such a strange alias, Caterpillar. But now he understood. At a first glance, Naruto had looked like an easy-going guy and a money grubber. A mercenary, fitting the stereotype. Ordinary and unassuming, like a caterpillar. But just like caterpillars transform into very beautiful butterflies once they come out of the cocoon and evolve, it was the same with Naruto when he revealed his true power. Asterism. Everyone watched with trepidation how the deity-like alien flew back on the ground. Though Superman tried to not show his inner emotions, a focused observer would notice how rigid his expression looked. It was even worse because Superman could feel that the alien's powers were of a magical nature, the bane of his physiology alongside kryptonite and red radiation. Nonetheless, Naruto was not interested in antagonizing them or getting back at them for trying to make things hard for him. Though he loved to joke around and act like a filled with youthfulness man, his mind was still that of an old man. In his eyes, the Justice League were nothing but a group of children that tried to pick a fight against an adult and got their butts whooped. For him, it was enough if they learned their lesson and stayed put for a while. He had no further interest in quarreling with them, and he certainly no longer cared about preaching and force-feeding his philosophy of life to other people like when was a teenager. The red and yellow energy seeped back into his body and the 10 truth-seeking balls melted into his back, joining his chakra pool too. Without saying a word to the ones around him, he headed straight towards Coriander, who was still rooted in her place despite having woken up earlier from the genjutsu he had placed on her. I've killed your captors. As I told you before, your parents hired me to rescue you. Naruto told her, and the translating device did its job to change his words into the language spoken on Tamaran. Coriander looked like she wanted to say something, but besides the trembling of her lower lip, she could not move her mouth. She was terrified. Come with me. I hope you will behave and not throw any temper tantrums. For your own good. A shaky nod was all the confirmation he needed before placing a hand on her shoulder and teleporting themselves back to his ship. Now, he did not need to physically restrain her anymore. The girl was too scared to go against his words. Asterism. I felt your power all the way from the other side of the planet. What the hell did you do? Kyuubi asked when Naruto flew back to Europe with his ship to pick him up and leave the planet. In response to that, Naruto threw up a mouthful of coagulated purple-black blood in the toilet. Ugh, I hate this. Half of his face was violet and there were patches of purple and black over his hands, forearms and chest too. It was the effect of drawing the polluted nature energy of the earth when he had entered the 6 paths sage mode. He had drawn a rather large amount of natural energy to conjure the truth-seeking orbs and use one of them to disintegrate that enormous Gordanian ship. What was happening currently was the reason why he always avoided using his sage mode unless it was necessary on the planets inhabited by technologically advanced sentient beings. Those planets would be infected and polluted by the beings living on it. When he entered the 6 paths sage mode on such a planet, it was as though he was drinking poison. Now, he was facing the consequences. After he threw up a few more times, he took a quick shower and came back to the living quarters of his ship where Coriander was still waiting on the very sofa where he had left her an hour ago. She had not moved at all. But she did manage to regain some of her composure in that time frame. When she saw the masked Naruto entering the room, she asked, "What are you going to do with me?" Naruto sighed. "Look, I told you 2 times already, your parents hired me to rescue you from the Scions. You're lying. Just tell me the truth," Coriander said, almost shouting. She looked very agitated. "You're saving her life and that's how she shows her gratitude. Ungrateful little twerp." Kyuubi growled and one of his tails elongated, about to slap the snot out her, but Naruto put a hand on his head to stop him. "It's alright, Kurama," Naruto said. "It's not that bad, I'm fine." Clearly, Naruto was referring to the reason why Kyuubi was angry, the fact that he got seriously ill. When he looked at the poisoned visage of Naruto and then at the girl who had not even said a thank you, he wanted to beat her up good and teach her some manners. Turning his attention back to Coriander, Naruto said, "I am a man of my word. I do not lie. Not in this kind of important matters." "How are you not? My parents have been dead for years," the girl shouted, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Naruto and Kyuubi looked at each other in doubt. "Explain," Kyuubi ordered. "It all started when the Gordanians attacked our planet. My sister had sold our planet's defense plans to the enemy. Because of her betrayal, Tamaran was conquered. In order to preserve the peace, for the sake of all the people of Tamaran, I was offered as a tribute to the Gordanians, as a slave." As she said that, Corian's green eyes glowed with anger and hatred. "After that, my sister staged a coup and took control of Tamaran. Her men had executed the entire royal family, both my parents and my brother. Only I was left alive, sold to the Scions who tortured and experimented on me for years." Energy bolts started taking form around her hands and she looked like she was about to lose control of them in her rage, but a large tail slapped her across the face so hard that she was thrown off the sofa. Her energy bolts disappeared back into her body before they could be fired. "If you as much as damage one chair in this ship after all he went through to rescue your sorry ass, I'll eat you alive, bounty be damned. This is your one and only warning." That threat would have come out as amusing had it been the previously tiny fox that made it, but that was not the case. Instead of a tiny fox cub there stood an enormous 9-tailed fox now, a fierce demon that cast a shadow over the entire living room with its size. Kyuubi had no lost love for humans of any kind, That's why his behavior towards Wonder Woman had been strange in Naruto's eyes. Normally, this rough and violent attitude was what he showed to other people, not to mention how angry he was at the moment because Naruto had gotten himself hurt. Kurama, get a hold of yourself. That's enough, Naruto said seriously. Though still pissed, Kyuubi listened to his words and reverted to his regular form. Naruto took him in his arms and then placed him on his shoulder where Kyuubi liked to sit usually. Follow me to the control room, Naruto told the girl and she hurried to come after him. Kyuubi smacking her with his tail had reminded her that she was not in a situation where she could throw tantrums and that the man in front of her was strong enough to kill her in a heartbeat, unlike the Gordanians from whom she had managed to escape before. After taking a seat in front of the computer, he called his information broker. Come on, pick up you dirty rat, Naruto said in annoyance after the fourth unanswered call. I have a bad feeling about this, Kyuubi said. I don't know, man, Ruinak has never tried to screw with me. He's never lied to me about job-related things. But there are only two options. Either the girl is lying about her parents being dead. Or that rat bastard is lying. And I sense that this girl is speaking the truth. Naruto shook his head. No, we can't take this as absolute. You know your negative emotion sensing can be fooled sometimes. If she truly believes that she is speaking the truth, you will not detect any lies even if what she says is not right. It could very be that she was made to believe that her parents were killed. That sounds more likely if you think what a piece of shit her sister is and that Ruinak has never given us a reason to doubt him. But Kyuubi was holding his position firmly. Trust me on this, Naruto. There's something fishy going on. Naruto looked at him in doubt but did not argue. Kyuubi did not say things like that often, but when he did, his instincts often proved to be spot on. As he typed on the keyboard to set the coordinates for the next space warp, towards Tamaran in the Vega system, he resolved himself to approach the rest of the mission with extra caution. What in the world? Did I put in the wrong coordinates? Naruto muttered to himself when he saw the desolate scenery outside, through the pilot cabin's window. It was a scene extremely similar to the one that he had seen half a year ago when he went to the Rao system at the request of Superman and saved the young Argonian girl, Kara Zor-El. Countless asteroids littered the space where the planet Tamaran should have been. Computer, confirm our location, Naruto ordered. At his request, the large screen of the computer showed a very detailed map of the Milky Way galaxy, a map that proceeded to be zoomed in rapidly. It took just a few seconds for the map to be zoomed in until only a planetary system was displayed on the screen, the Vega system. On it, an inverted green triangle was blinking above the planet Tamaran. But when looking through the windows of the ship, Tamaran was nowhere to be seen. Countless chunks of rocks and a large amount of debris was all that was left of the previously flourishing planet. Although Coriander did not understand the Almeratian language that Naruto used to interact with the AI of the ship, it did not take a genius to understand what was going on when she saw their location on the map of the Vega system and the mass of asteroids outside. Tears welled up in her eyes and she started crying bitterly. From someone who had had everything, Coriander had lost everything. Initially, a princess of the royal family and the next in line to become the ruler of her planet, she was sold out by her own parents, at a very frail age, for the sake of the greater good, for peace. She became a slave and she even lost her innocence when one of the Gordanian jailers raped her. She had murdered the Gordanian in revenge later on, but the damage done to her was obviously not repaired. Instead, things only continued to spiral downwards from there. After killing her jailers and attempting to escape, the Gordanians thought of her as too dangerous and sold her to their allies, the Scion monarchy. In the following years, she had endured all kinds of torture and experiments at the hands of the Scions. And now, even her homeworld had been destroyed. Coriander let herself down on her knees and sobbed in her hands. Over the course of his long life, after witnessing the death of many worlds, including the apocalypse of his own, Naruto inadvertently became detached from the world around him. He would enjoy the moment and have fun, but he always kept other people and places at an arm's length, never letting anyone in his heart except for his lifelong friend, Kyuubi. However, at that moment, hearing the girl's anguished cries cracked his heart. Do you understand pain a little now? If you don't share someone's pain, you can never understand them. Even to this day, almost a century after his fateful battle against the leader of the Akatsuki, Uzumaki Nagato, Naruto could vividly remember every single moment of it, every single word of his former enemy. Nagato was the one person that had marked him the most, even more than his mentor, the Toad Sage. Because the older Naruto grew, the more he realized the naivete of Jiraiya's dream and the harsh truth in Pain's words. Naruto lowered himself to Korean's level and put his hand gently on her shoulder. I'm sorry for your loss. Her situation hit very close to home for Naruto. He may have not had it as bad as Coriander, to be enslaved and raped by his captors, but, just like her, he had also been sacrificed by his own father for the sake of the village, for the greater good. Betrayed by their family for the sake of peace. And just like her, he had also lost his homeworld. He understood all too well her pain. And that was why his passive attitude cracked when faced with her cries. It was just a small show of compassion on Naruto's side, but for the crying Coriander, it was the drop that spilt the glass. She lunged at him and her arms wrapped around his back tightly as she started to cry out loud in his chest. I have nothing left, nothing. Coriander said through her tears. What could he say to comfort the young woman desperately crying in his arms? That things have to get worse before they can get better. Or that she's at the lowest point in her life and that, from now on, things can only go up. In his mind, such cheap lip service was disgusting. He chose to stay silent, only offering her a shoulder to cry on. Naruto let out a drawn-out sigh of despondency. In this dog-eat-dog world, being weak is almost like a sin. But even if you're powerful, you can only guarantee your own survival. For all my power, I could never protect everything. On the grand scale of the universe, one man is nothing. In front of a reality-bender god, even I would be in danger. Against the all-powerful force of the void, in front of the universe's power, I am but a speck of dust. There were some groups and organizations like the Green Lantern Corps that tried to uphold peace and justice in the universe, but they were only minimally successful and the death toll was very high. Despite their efforts, intergalactic wars still raged on, greedy dictators took over planets and enslaved their inhabitants, and mad conquerors destroyed everything in their path. And that was only on a large scale, to say nothing about the countless conflicts that took place every day on every planet, armed conflicts, killings, kidnappings, physical and sexual abuse, torturing, human trafficking, etc. I've fought against evil for decades, even after coming into this new world. But no matter what I did, it always came back. No matter how much I stepped on it, the darkness crawled back, like a cockroach. Yin and yang, evil and good, darkness and light. Supposedly, for life to exist, there has to be a balance between these two opposing sides. But where is the light when I can see only darkness? Who is the light and what does it do to stop the ever-growing darkness? Where are all the benevolent gods that so many people worship and pray to? Naruto had no wild thoughts about him bearing the role of the light. He was but a tired old man, a lone man. He had been the so-called child of the prophecy, but he had still failed at protecting his own homeworld. If he could not protect his loved ones and his home, he had no illusions about being able to protect the universe at large. His power may have grown by a lot, but just like his powers, the strength of the enemy had increased just as much, if not more. Fighting against the darkness is like fighting a many-headed monster, which, each time a neck is severed, sprouts a head even fiercer and cleverer than before. Darkness is ever evolving, ever spreading and indestructible. That was the conclusion that he had reached after more than 100 years of life. That the laws of the universe made it so there would always be darkness. Darkness would never be destroyed for as long as sentient living beings existed. And this thought filled him with helplessness. Over the years, it made him lose much of the drive that he used to have in his early teen years when he wanted to protect every innocent being, regardless of whether they were friends or strangers. The despair of knowing that no matter what he did, darkness would never be extinguished, it slowly made him become detached from the world around him. But there were moments like the present one when he came in contact with people whose pain he could relate to. People like Superman, people like Coriander. Those moments always shook his cold heart and perturbed his inner peace and calm. Asterism. What are you going to do now, Naruto? Kyuubi asked quietly. After taking the sleeping Tamarinine princess to one of the rooms in the ship's living quarters, Man and Fox were now back in the control room, alone. I'm going to turn in Vandal Savage to the Scions first. You do realize that this bounty was most likely a highly elaborated trap from the beginning, right? Kyuubi asked again. Oh. I am betting on that, Naruto said darkly. From the moment that he saw that Tamaran was destroyed, he realized that Kyuubi's hunch about Rui Nak betraying them was right all along. As one of the top information brokers in the Milky Way galaxy, there was no way that Ruinak did not know that Corian's parents were dead or that Tamaran had been destroyed. That rat betrayed us, QB said. Most likely, he was paid by the Scions to deliver us to him. I can totally see those crazed scientists wanting to dissect you and me to see what makes us tick and what gives us our power. And that scum of a rat even sold his wife and kids for money, to say nothing of his willingness to sell you. Naruto nodded his head and added. The bounty to save the Princess of Tamaran was probably just to distract us and give more of a reason and make sure we entered one of the Saiyan's bases. Cold laughter came from him as he said, but I will play the game. He. At his different than usual demeanor, QB jumped off Naruto's shoulder and then stood in front of him. He looked him in the eye and said meaningfully. Are we going all out? Naruto chuckled softly. You know me so well, Kurama. As they were speaking, over a dozen space warp tunnels appeared within 200 miles of their ship. The radar of the ship went crazy and alarms started blaring as multiple hostile targets appeared within its scope. From those space warp tunnels, almost 40 frigate-class and even 8 galleon-class warships came out. I hope whatever the Scions had bribed the rat with was worth trading his life for. Because I'll rip him to shreds after I am done here. Naruto growled. It was not his normal voice, it was deeper and it sounded demonic. The nails of his fingers had turned into claws, and if it had not been for his masking jutsu that made his hair look golden yellow, it could have been seen that his hair had become blood red, compared to the regular strawberry blonde from before. Under his mask, his canines grew into fangs as well, and his already thick whisker-like marks became darker and deeper. A beeping sound was being made by the computer, showing an incoming transmission, but a clawed finger pressed on a key to reject it. He did not need to hear what the incoming fleet of warships had to say to know their intentions. On the large screen of his computer, he could see the footage recorded by the eye. The ships that had appeared on their radar carried the emblems of the Scion monarchy and the Gordanian Empire. They think they can trap and capture us like a beast. Come, Kurama. It's time we reminded the world what happens after provoking a slumbering beast. The fox met the man's fist in a fist bump, and, as the two of them looked at each other, bloodthirsty grins crept on their faces. In the next moment, their silhouettes teleported out of the ship. Asterism. Hundreds of ships were firing laser beams at an enormous monstrosity. A fission-type missile exploded against the torso of the beast, and an enormous mushroom-like cloud of fire rose for tens of miles into the sky, even puncturing the stratosphere of the planet. A roar of pain came from the beast as a patch of its chest was burnt off. This isn't right. This wasn't in our calculations. Our data was wrong. A frail-looking green lizard man yelled hysterically. They had not known that the tiny pet of the mercenary they wanted to capture would transform into a world-destroying behemoth. That fission-type missile was the strongest weapon of mass destruction they could use without endangering the very core of the planet their race was living on. But that weapon that could lay waste to an entire nation had only scraped some skin off the beast's chest. The one that looked like the commander of the lizard men screamed. Everyone, evacuate the planet. Prepare the star destroyers and blow up everything to dust. Blow them all up along with the planet. His adjutants could not help yelling out in disbelief. But sir, our home and everything we've worked so hard for will. The adjutant, however, did not finish speaking when the sky suddenly seemed to turn black. His words died out in his throat when an enormous sphere of purple-black energy cast a shadow over the capital city of the planet. Boom. A cataclysmic explosion boomed. A white light blinded every living being in range, and the shockwave it generated deafened everyone a second later. The energy shield that should have been capable of defending even against a shot from a star-destroying particle cannon was obliterated. 20 galleon-type warships equipped with star-destroying cannons flew in front of the enormous beast. But despite the destructive might of their warships, everyone on board trembled at the sight of the colossal beast standing ahead of them. They have never seen anything as monstrous as that before. Blood-red fur, over 1,500 feet in height and over 2,500 feet in length. At its back, 9 enormous tails created tornadoes just with simple twitches. It was a gargantuan 9-tailed demon fox. Kurama. Sea of Fire. Naruto shouted. He was on top of the enormous fox's head, but he was so small that he could not be seen from outside. The fur of the beast's head was even taller than him. He was no bigger than a fly was on a regular fox. He sat on his knees, with both hands pressed down on the head of QB. A massive amount of chakra was being passed on from him to the demon below through his hands. The titanic demon roared. A conic breath of fire covered the entire sky. Like the furious waves of an ocean, the stream of fire obliterated everything in its path. The several miles-long star-destroying warships were reduced to liquid metal in mere seconds. Flames hotter than the sun melted everything. It was hell. And in the middle of that hell, demonic laughter shook the skies. Wahaha. Die. Die. QB reveled in the feeling of power, in the slaughter. Power like he had never wielded back in the elemental nations. A power not any lower than that of the 10-tailed beast, a god. He did not have many opportunities to let loose like that. When Naruto had unsealed him from his body, he was in his 40s. It took Naruto nearly 3 decades of studying the art of Fuinjutsu before he became proficient and confident enough to undo the seal without killing himself in the process. But after 40 years spent locked by the Shinigami's seal, much of Kyuubi's chakra had seeped into Naruto, fusing with him. That was why Naruto's whisker marks were so thick and dark now by default, and that was also why his golden blonde hair had become a strawberry blonde, almost red. Before unsealing Kyuubi, Man and Biju had been very close to the point where they would completely fuse into one single entity. When Naruto finally unsealed him, the Biju lost a part of himself in the process. In the present, Kyuubi could not regenerate his chakra like before, simply by drawing it in from the outside world. That's why he had become a glutton that would eat 24/7. He converted the physical energy from anything he ate into chakra. That was also why he took on the appearance of a tiny fox cub most of the time, to preserve his energy. But when Kyuubi actually let loose and put to use all the chakra that he had accumulated over many years, this was the result, a might far surpassing the original level of power given to him by his creator, Rikudo Sennin. Unlike before, there was no real limit to how much chakra he could store. Theoretically, with enough time and chakra, he could become invincible. He was no longer just a demonic fox. In the present, Kyuubi was like a god, a demonic fox god. Prepare one final attack, destroy their planet, Naruto said. His ruthless words would have shocked his younger self back in the elemental nations. But Naruto was no stranger to the atrocities that this race of degenerates had committed over their millions of years of existence. There was not a single innocent among them. When one wants to cut the weeds, they have to pull them from their roots. Complete annihilation. Kyuubi's booming evil laughter subsided. He had never fully lost himself in his lust for carnage and slaughter. He had not forgotten even for a second that his current power was possible only because of the chakra that Naruto was pouring into him, a chakra that Naruto absorbed from nature, on a planet even more polluted and infected than the Earth. Are you sure, Naruto? Kyuubi asked worriedly. Just do it, Naruto said grimly. I'm only acting as a conductor, not as the engine. I'm just pouring chakra into you instead of using it myself. The damage this infected natural energy does to me is not as bad as if I was the one to use it and cast jutsus. Despite his words of reassurance, right at that moment, his mask cracked and dispersed into particles of light. His perfect chakra control was starting to slip up. His red hair came into view now that the mask no longer disguised it, and the appearance of his face too. He was horrible to look at. Had Kyuubi been able to see how Naruto looked at that moment, he would have stopped his rampage in a heartbeat. Purple-black blood was flowing from a corner of his mouth. Most of the skin on his face was a mixture of dark violet and black, and he lost the sight in one of his eyes after half of his face had been petrified. It was a clear sign of nature energy poisoning. If he did not stop drawing on nature's energy very soon, at this rate, his entire body would turn into stone, becoming a statue just like the many other people before him who had lost control of their senjutsu. Kyuubi did not have a wishy-washy nature. He was aware of the dangers Naruto faced the longer he kept using this infected natural energy. So he did not hesitate. Cupping his fists together, he slammed them against the ground with all the strength that his gigantic body was capable of. A huge crack appeared in the ground, splitting the crust of the planet open for dozens of miles. Then, opening his enormous mouth wide open, the largest Bayudama Kyuubi had ever cast slowly took form in front of him. It was even larger than his half-a-mile-long body. At last, he fired it into the huge crack that he had made in the crust of the planet. Despite how violent and powerful the following explosion was, it was not enough to destroy an entire planet by itself. But the chain of reactions that it produced made up for it. The aftershocks and the rest of the berserk chakra resulted from the tailed beast bomb's explosion reached the very core of the planet. Only a few seconds later, terrible earthquakes shook the entire surface of the planet and volcanoes started showing signs of erupting very soon, from everywhere. It was the end of the world. After a few hours, the planet was going to explode from within. Make yourself tiny, Kurama. Quickly, Naruto said with difficulty because the petrifying process was advancing further than before and even started to turn to stone his mouth too. The over 1,500 feet tall and over 2,500 feet long demonic fox god decreased in size at a very fast speed until it became no larger than a horse. Kyuubi had realized that Naruto was in a critical condition. He made himself small enough for Naruto to be able to teleport them both but also big enough for him to carry his wounded friend. In a flash of yellow and red light, the two of them appeared 4,000 miles away, in the exosphere of the planet, aboard their invisible ship. Naruto, you. The fox could not continue speaking. Except for his right eye, all of Naruto's face had turned into stone along with his left hand and leg. He was petrified in a kneeling position, bent over, the position he had had while pouring his chakra into Kyuubi. Naruto weakly raised his still working hand and put it on Kyuubi's chest. His index finger drew invisible lines on his chest like he was writing. Don't worry. I'll be okay. Kyuubi read by imagining what the lines Naruto drew with his finger would be in kanji. Naruto made a weak thumbs-up gesture and then proceeded to write again on the fox's chest. Call Lobo, return favor, rat bastard, warp ship. Earth. Naruto once again made a thumbs-up gesture to show that Kyuubi got it right. After that, his only remaining eye closed. He lost his consciousness. Asterism. While Naruto was unconscious, on the brink of death, and Kyuubi was fumbling with the computer of the ship to activate the space warp, the rest of the universe was in an uproar. The two of them had no idea about how far-reaching were the consequences of their outrageous display of power and ruthless violence. They were in every discussion of the upper echelons of all the powerful forces of the galaxy and not only. The well-informed and powerful organizations in the entire known universe were shocked because the Scions were one of the oldest races of the universe, almost as old as the Guardians of the Green Lantern Corps who had created them. No self-respecting interstellar power could claim that they had not heard of the Scions and the cruel dominion over the lawless Vega system. However, such an old, powerful, and technologically advanced race had been massacred to the last individual in the span of a day. In the Vega system, the Gordanian Empire's ruling body was in a panic. Their allies and masters, the Scions, possessed far superior technology and means of destruction and/or defense. But they had been eradicated in only one day. Hundreds of thousands of Gordanians evacuated Kana planet in the following weeks, running for their lives. In contrast to the Gordanians, billions of other people in the Vega system were celebrating the day of liberation. The Scions who had taken over the entire system were no more. Countless people came out in the streets and celebrated together, regardless of race or nationality when the news of Scion's massacre came out. On Thanagar, the members of the ruling council of the Thanagarians were having difficulty to contain smiles on their faces. For generations, they had been at war against the Gordanians and, as of late, they were even starting to get pushed back by the flying lizard men. Although the Gordanians had not been destroyed along with the Scions, the Thanagarians were very happy with the outcome. Without the Scion's technology to support them from the back, the Gordanian Empire's defeat was only a matter of time. On Earth, Jon Stewart had a look of disbelief on his face when Salarak, the administrator of the Green Lantern Corps, sent him, and the rest of the Green Lanterns too, a shocking report. The Scions of the Vega system have been massacred. An intergalactic mercenary, Uzumaki Naruto, also known as Caterpillar, and his companion, Kyuubi, a demon, have destroyed the Scion's planet and the 6 moons that they had colonized. The Guardians have classified the two of them as universal-level threats. All Green Lanterns in possession of more information about these two subjects are to report to OA immediately. On New Genesis and Apocalypse, Highfather and Darkseid, the rulers of the two factions of the New Gods, were both frowning, though because of different reasons. The Vega system was a place that even Darkseid had not attempted to conquer until then because he recognized the threat that the Scion's technology posed. Darkseid did not like the sudden apparition of such a wild and violent dark horse, one that annihilated an entire race in one day. New Genesis and the Justice League were annoying enough as it was. He did not like the thought of such a dangerous variable popping up in his plans of world domination. As for Highfather, he went into a deep meditation, trying to make contact with the source. He was worried about such a powerful character being evil. His adopted son, Orion, the most valiant warrior of the gods from New Genesis, was getting ready to leave their world and make contact with the dangerous mercenary and his beast, to ascertain their intentions and thoughts. On the planet Almerac, a beautiful red-haired woman shot up from her throne, her face betraying the shock she was feeling. She was Maxima, the Queen of Almerac. A series of contrasting emotions flashed in her eyes, at first anger, then infatuation, and then anger again. She had met the mercenary and his fox a few years before. Infatuated with how powerful he was, she had tried to kidnap him and make him her husband by force. But not only that he rejected her, he even stole one of their most advanced stealth-oriented warships before escaping from the planet. She had not heard anything about him for years, but when she finally heard some news about him again, it was about him annihilating a race as powerful as the Scions. Her infatuation levels skyrocketed. Flushed with excitement and desire and with her previous anger nearly forgotten, she immediately ordered her subordinates to search for more information about his whereabouts. She was definitely going to hunt him down and make him her husband. Lastly, a yellow power ring took flight from Cord, in the antimatter universe. Its destination was precise, the Earth, in the Sol system, Milky Way galaxy. Target, QB, the nine-tailed demonic fox god. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.